The desert base was quiet before dawn, silent in that way only the wasteland could be. Sand carried whispers, and men who'd seen combat preferred to rise before the sun. Captain Troy Maddox stood with arms crossed on the shooting range, watching his newest batch of recruits fumble with wind calibration like it was magic. The sky cracked lavender above the canyon line, and he muttered, "Useless," under his breath. Then he heard hooves. Every head turned. A pale horse, speckled and lean, trotted up the gravel path as though summoned. Atop it rode a girl, small, maybe 12 or 13, with ash-blonde hair matted by dust and wind. Her boots didn't reach the stirrups. She wore no helmet, no hat, only a battered olive coat that hung like a curtain over her frame. A long rifle was strapped to her back, muzzle down. She didn't look scared. She didn't look at all. The men went still. A few chuckled nervously, unsure whether this was a prank, a drill, or hallucination. Troy squinted. Someone lose a kid? The girl reined her horse to a halt. The horse didn't snort or paw the dirt. It simply stopped, like it had been here before. She slid off and walked forward, ignoring the soldiers around her. Her boots left faint half-moons in the sand. She reached into her coat and pulled out a crumpled letter. Wordless, she handed it to Troy. He hesitated. The envelope was unmarked except for a stamp. Military grade, red wax, long retired. He opened it. 3 lines in crisp ink. Let her stay. Watch her shoot. J.F. Weston. Weston. That name hadn't crossed Troy's desk in 5 years. The general had retired before most of these kids were out of high school. Dead now, wasn't he? He looked up. You know what this means? The girl shrugged. Means I stay. Troy raised a brow. That rifle. Where'd you get it? She patted the stock. It's mine. The horse snorted behind her, as if punctuating her point. The men chuckled again, uneasy. Troy handed the letter to his lieutenant. She got a name? The girl finally spoke clearly. Evie. Last name. Don't know it. That silenced them again. He studied her. Face unreadable. No bruises, no limp, no signs of trauma. Yet something in her stillness made him itch. He nodded to the stable. Get her horse some water. I'll do it, she said. You don't take orders? I follow sense. She walked ghost. Troy had no idea how he knew the horse's name, but it fit, toward the stables, and none of the men dared laugh this time. That evening, while the others smoked and swapped stories under the sodium lights, Troy found her in the hayloft. She was lying on her back, fingers laced over her chest, staring through a hole in the roof at the stars. Ghost lay curled below her, tail flicking at flies. You're not just passing through, he said. She didn't move. Didn't have anywhere to pass through from. What's with the rifle? She tilted her head slightly. It shoots. That's supposed to be funny? No. Troy climbed halfway up the ladder. You don't talk much, huh? My mama did the talking. I listened. And where is she now? Evie's breath caught just once. Then she sat up. Gone. Run off. Dead. The barn went quiet again, broken only by Ghost's soft exhale. She said, I find a man here, Evie whispered. A man who owed her. Troy gripped the rung tighter. What was her name? She didn't answer. He climbed down slowly, heart thudding with something he didn't want to name. Guilt had many faces, but it rarely came riding on a horse with a child holding steel. The next morning, drills resumed. Recruits lined up, struggling to hit mid-range targets as wind shifted unpredictably. Evie stood behind the line, arms crossed, watching. Not fidgeting, not blinking, watching. Lieutenant Hayes chuckled. Let her take a shot, sir. Might humble the boys. Troy sighed. You know how insane that sounds? She's got a rifle. Let's see if it's for show. Evie stepped forward before Troy could speak. She unstrapped the weapon. It was old but cared for, scoped oil balanced. What target? She asked. The hostage rescue setup. Behind the ridge. The farthest target. 1,000 yards across shifting wind with swinging dummies. No one hit it clean. She lay prone. Adjusted the scope. Checked the angle. Didn't ask for help. Troy crouched beside her. You sure? She blinked once. You said watch me shoot. She exhaled, slow and deep, like her whole body went still. The rifle cracked. The crowd gasped. A tiny puff of chalk exploded from the dummy's shoulder, non-lethal precision. Troy's heart stopped. So did the whispers. She stood, slid the rifle onto her back again. "You gonna let me stay?" No one answered. She turned and walked toward Ghost, who was already waiting at the edge of the compound, ears forward. Troy didn't move. Couldn't. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he saw another rifle, another woman, another impossible shot, and a little girl he'd left behind in a war zone. She was here now, and she wasn't asking permission anymore. For 3 days, she said nothing. Evie rose at dawn with the soldiers, fed Ghost by hand, then sat cross-legged near the range as drills unfolded. She didn't ask questions, didn't offer help, just watched with a stillness that made the younger recruits nervous. Her presence became a shadow, quiet, constant, unnerving. Captain Troy Maddox spent the time combing through Weston's records. The general's name, one scrawled across that letter, wasn't some casual signature. Weston had led special recon across hostile zones, often taking fire for the sake of evacuation. Troy had served under him once. He remembered a mission gone wrong in the Badlands of Kinner. Evac window missed, too much smoke, too many civilians. Weston had pulled a sniper and her daughter from that mess. The sniper, Elena. The daughter had a tiny braid and a steely gaze. Troy leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. If Evie was that child, she wasn't supposed to be alive. The file said only one made it out. That afternoon, Troy found her in the motor pool, crouched beside a disassembled scope. The parts were laid out perfectly, cleaned with lint-free cloth and patience. No one had asked her to be there. "You touch government property without permission?" Evie didn't look up. Lens was cracked. Would have thrown every shot left. "That's not your job." Did it anyway. "You planning on fixing every broken thing you see?" Her hand stopped. "If no one else does." Troy stared. There was no ego in her tone. Just duty, like it was coded into her bones. He crossed his arms. "You know how you hit that dummy last week?" Evie glanced at him. "Yes. It was a trick shot. Most of my men can't make that under perfect conditions." She shrugged. "Mama taught me how to see wind." Troy knelt beside her. "Wind's invisible. Not to the trees. Not to the sand. You really expect me to believe your mother trained you like that?" She finally looked at him full on. Her eyes were clear, not angry, not pleading. "You don't have to believe anything. But you saw it." He exhaled through his nose. "Yeah, I did." From that day on, he watched her differently. Not as a stray kid or a ghost from the past, but as something else. Something feral, yet fiercely intentional. Late one night, lightning cracked across the desert. A dry storm rolled in. No rain, just wind and thunder, splitting the sky open. Troy found her and Ghost in the stable. The horse was pacing, eyes wild. Ghost didn't like thunder, and for the first time, Troy saw Evie afraid. Not for herself, for the horse. She'd tethered him loosely, whispering things under her breath. Her arms circled his neck like a lifeline. "He hates storms," she said when Troy entered. "Thinks they'll take him like they took her." Troy stepped closer. "Your mom." Evie didn't reply, but she didn't need to. She sat with Ghost all night. When the thunder faded, she curled up in the straw beside him, hand resting on his flank. Ghost closed his eyes first. The next morning, Colonel Sinclair arrived. She was one of the few officers Troy respected. Battle-scarred, straight-talking, and terrifying when she wanted to be. She walked the grounds with clipped steps, watching the trainees, speaking to no one. Then she saw Evie. Sinclair approached slowly, eyeing the girl like one does a buried memory. "Where'd she come from?" Troy gave her the letter. Sinclair read it, then folded it once and slid it into her breast pocket. "You know who this girl is?" "I have ideas. She moves like Elena." "That's what I think, too." Sinclair sighed. "Elena never missed a shot. Said her little girl was the only thing steadier than her own heartbeat." Evie approached them then, rifle across her back. "I cleaned the scopes again," she said. Sinclair tilted her head. "You always carry that rifle?" "Yes." "You shoot it often?" "Only when it matters." Sinclair turned to Troy. "Put her on the long-range course. No support, just her in the wind." "You sure?" "She's not a kid. She's something else." The next day, Troy set up the course. Evie walked the field alone, rifle slung, wind tugging her coat. Ghost waited behind the fence like he knew she'd return. A steel disc the size of a saucer swung from a tree limb 1,200 yards out in unpredictable gusts. Recruits watched from the berm, murmuring. Evie lay flat, adjusted, calculated, fired. Ping. The disc spun twice, cleanly hit through its center. Dead silence. Then Sinclair laughed. It wasn't mocking. It was awe. Weston wasn't crazy, she said. He saw it. She's lightning in a bottle. Later that evening, Troy found Evie brushing Ghost's mane outside the stable. The sunset made her hair look almost silver. He approached slowly. You always ride alone? She shrugged. No one else ever kept up. You afraid of being alone? She looked at Ghost. He doesn't let me be. Must have taken a lot to get him to trust you. He came broken, she whispered. So did I. Troy didn't know what to say to that. So he simply sat beside her, wordless, until the sky turned black and stars returned. And in the silence, he wondered how much of Elena lived on in that girl, and how much had been born from the loss of her. The truth sat in Troy's chest like an undetonated charge. Evie's presence had become part of the base's rhythm. Quiet mornings, perfect shots, a shadow that moved where Ghost moved. The recruits no longer mocked her. Some even tried to mimic her breathing, her stillness. She didn't correct them, but she never praised them either. She was teaching them without saying a word. And Troy couldn't sleep. Each night, the memories came back like smudged photographs. Smoke in the trees, the hiss of static on the radio, the final order from General Weston. Leave her. We don't have time. He'd obeyed. They'd taken who they could. The sniper had stayed behind, promising to hold the high ridge until the team was clear. Elena. She wore a red scarf around her wrist and carried her daughter strapped to her back under a tattered coat. Troy had watched them disappear in the dust and fire. Now the girl was back, alive, and with every perfect shot, she reminded him of the one thing he'd never been able to erase. He should have gone back. One afternoon, the training session was interrupted by an unexpected drill, a base-wide alert, simulated explosion, full lockdown. Sirens screamed, and dust plumed into the sky. Soldiers scrambled into formation. But Ghost reared, tied loosely outside the stable. The horse went wild at the sirens. His hooves kicked the fence apart, and he bolted, muscles tense with memory, eyes white with fear. Evie screamed his name once, then took off after him. Troy didn't think. He ran after her, grabbing a jeep without permission, speeding into the scrublands beyond the perimeter. He found her nearly a mile out, sprinting across cracked earth, her boots sinking into soft sand. Ghost was staggering by a dry ravine, his front leg trembling, blood matting his forelock from a cut above the eye. Evie reached him first. She dropped to her knees beside the horse, gripping his mane, whispering nonsense between sobs. Her voice cracked like a child's, not the soldier-like tone she usually wore. Please, don't do this to me. Don't leave. Troy approached slowly. The sight hollowed him. Evie clutched Ghost's face to hers, her cheeks streaked with dirt and panic. The horse shivered under her hands. He heard the sirens, she choked out. It's the same sound from the night she died. He remembers. He remembers. Troy crouched beside her. We need to get him back. He's bleeding. Evie shook her head violently. If we move him wrong, his leg, her voice caught again. He's all I have left. Troy hesitated. She wasn't talking about a horse anymore. He touched her shoulder gently. We'll go slow. I promise. I'll walk beside him the whole way. She didn't answer right away. Then finally, she nodded once, but didn't let go of Ghost. They moved inch by inch, leading Ghost back under the heavy sky. By the time they reached the stable, dusk had swallowed the land. A medic checked the wound, just a shallow gash, no break, no permanent damage. Troy left the stall door open and sat beside her on a bale of hay. Evie leaned against the wall, exhausted, cheeks stained with dried salt. Do you want to know what happened to her? Troy asked. Evie didn't look up. I was there. The day everything went wrong. She kept us alive. All of us. We were ordered to evacuate, but she stayed behind to give us cover. She didn't have to, but she did. Still nothing. Troy swallowed. We thought the child didn't make it. Evie finally turned. Her voice was paper-thin. She said someone made the call to leave her, but they didn't wait long enough. She told me that every night, even when she was sick, so I wouldn't forget. Troy nodded, shame pressing against his ribs. That someone was me. The words hung in the air. Evie stared at him for a long time. Why tell me now? Because I'm tired of pretending I didn't fail her. And I didn't know if telling you would make it worse or better. I just knew I owed you the truth. She looked down at her boots, then up at Ghost, resting, breathing slow and steady. She wiped her face with her sleeve. She forgave you, she said softly, but I haven't decided if I will. Troy accepted the sentence with a quiet nod. Evie stood and pulled the stall door closed gently. Ghost neighed, just once a low sound of comfort. Before walking out, she turned to him. Her eyes weren't angry, just tired. She said if I ever found you, I should listen to what you did, not what you say. Troy looked up at her. Then I hope you're watching. She walked away without a word. And Troy sat in the stable long after she was gone, surrounded by the smell of hay and old memories. They didn't speak for days. Evie returned to her silent routine. Early mornings with Ghost, long hours at the range, vanishing in the evening without a sound. But something in her had shifted. The way she handled her rifle, the way she moved, sharper but heavier. She hadn't forgiven Troy, not yet. Maybe not ever, but she was still here. Troy watched from a distance. He didn't try to explain himself again. Instead, he matched her silence with quiet action. He cleared the stable after dark so she and Ghost could rest in peace. He replaced her cracked scope without a word. And when her boots wore through at the soles, he left a new pair near her cot, saying nothing. Colonel Sinclair saw it too. You're doing what she asked, Sinclair said one afternoon. Showing, not saying. She's still carrying it. Of course she is. But you gave her space to carry it without being alone. Word spread through the base that the annual precision exhibition was back on. It was more than a contest. It was a statement. The highest-ranking officers from 3 commands would attend, and rumor had it brass from D.C. would be watching through scopes. Sinclair made the suggestion. Let the girl close it out. Troy's jaw tensed. You sure they'll allow that? They'll allow whatever gets the crowd to stop breathing for 10 seconds. Troy brought it up to Evie 2 days later while she was cleaning her rifle beside Ghost. He didn't stand over her, just crouched near the fence and spoke without force. They want you for the final shot at the exhibition. Evie didn't lift her head. Do you want that? I want people to see what you are. But I won't push it. She paused, then said, then I'll do it. But you don't talk to me before it. Or after. Troy nodded once. Fair. The morning of the exhibition dawned windless and bright, a rare calm in the Mojave heat. Bleachers were filled with pressed uniforms, reporters, cadets, and an air of restless anticipation. Evie arrived on horseback. The sight alone quieted the entire base. Ghost was cleaned and proud, one leg wrapped from his earlier injury, but he held his head high. Evie wore her mother's red scarf, tied tight around her wrist, just as Elena had in the last photo Troy remembered. Her rifle gleamed against her back like an extension of her spine. The announcer hesitated before reading her name. No rank, no unit, just Evie. The shot she was assigned wasn't just difficult, it was theatrical. A moving disc swung on a wire 1,000 yards out, surrounded by no-fire zones. To hit it, the shooter had to calculate wind, timing, horse gait, and velocity, all while riding at a gallop. Troy stood behind the line, arms crossed, heart clenched. Evie didn't ask for range data. She didn't adjust her grip. She simply mounted Ghost, trotted forward, and waited. When the bell rang, they surged. Ghost moved like he knew the route by heart, hooves pounding over the packed dirt. Evie rose slightly in the saddle, spine steady, rifle drawn and balanced. The disc appeared, swinging hard to the left. She didn't blink. One shot cracked. The disc split dead center. The entire range went silent. Then the applause came, raw, erupting real. Evie circled back without expression, rifle lowered. She dismounted, unsaddled Ghost herself, and led him away before anyone could stop her for questions or praise. But at the edge of the lot, she paused. Troy stood watching, exactly where she knew he'd be. She didn't walk up to him. She didn't smile. but she turned her head, just enough to let her voice carry. She came to me in a dream last night. Troy stepped forward, slow. Your mother. Evie nodded once. She said you stayed longer than she thought you would. Troy felt his breath catch. Evie looked over her shoulder, eyes soft but unreadable. She said that was enough, and maybe one day I'll agree. Then she walked ghost into the sun, disappearing into the golden light. Rifle swaying gently at her back like a promise waiting to be kept.